What is it about the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day that brings out the cowardly, that brings out the craven, that brings out the incompetent? Hi, this is Colin Flaherty. I'm the author of Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. Here we talk about black mob violence, black on white crime, black on old, black on young, black on gay, black on straight, black on Asian, black on kittens, puppies, and turtles. And how it's wildly out of proportion. How so many politicians and reporters and public figures are in denial, deceit, and delusion about it. How the story of black victimization, how black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. How that is the greatest lie of our lifetime. That's what we do here. We expose that lie every day on this podcast. You know, every Martin Luther King Day is not that much different than lots of other days, but maybe a little bit different. I mean, we saw a lot of violence yesterday, a lot of law breaking, a lot of anarchy, a lot of defiance. We saw a lot of stuff going on in Miami, Los Angeles, Las Vegas. And I did a video on that stuff, so we don't need to really get into some of the details of some of the large-scale black mob violence that happened over the last 48 hours. All to remember the champion of peace, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. But what I really took note of yesterday was the amount of kind of ridiculous things that were happening, stupid things that were happening, and they're only allowed to happen because there's nobody there to push back. It all just keeps filling into this vacuum of moral emptiness. You know, for the last 50 years, Republicans have had one strategy. Republicans and conservatives have had one strategy for dealing with the fellas. And that is basically to go around behind them whenever a fella or one of their liberal enablers, a Joe Biden or Dick Durbin or whomever, whenever they say, hey, you Republicans and conservatives, you're just nothing but a bunch of racist guys. And the only thing the Republicans can say is, oh, no, we're not racist, and to prove it, we're going to treat black people in a ridiculously racist way. We're going to give them special treatment. We're going to give them affirmative action in a lot of different areas. And if you ask a black person or one of their liberal enablers about affirmative action, the first thing they tell you is, no, it doesn't exist, Colin. That's a myth. Affirmative action doesn't exist, but always in the same sentence they tell you this one other thing. Colin, it doesn't exist, but here's why it exists, because we need it. So somehow, 50 years ago, Republicans decided we would just let black people and people of color jump to the front of the line, whether it's for colleges, whether it's for jobs, whether it's for contracts. And then we're all just going to pretend it's not happening. Then we're all going to pretend. Then when we finally have to admit how it is happening, how deep and wide these special preferences are based on race, then we have to say, well, we need them. The famous Sandra Day O'Connor quote from a couple of years ago. Well, affirmative action, we don't like it, but we'll probably need it for another 25 years. I think that was like 15, 20 years ago. I don't remember. I'm not an attorney. I don't even play one on TV. But I don't remember in the Constitution or any kind of body of law ever having that little timer on it before. Yeah, this law is not really constitutional, but let's let it be constitutional for 25 years, special treatment based on race. How does that sound? Wow. Do I get the, who was that? The wisdom of, who was the king who split the baby down the middle? Is that what we're going to start calling Sandra Day O'Connor now? What a ridiculous decision. But Republicans don't have any. What are the alternatives? All they do is just go around going, oh, we're not racist. We're not racist. Then they hire people at the Republican National Committee, whatever their job title is, their function is, to go around going, usually a black person, usually go around saying, no, Republicans aren't racist. Or even the President Trump doesn't get a free pass on this either. He hires TV reality star Omarosa, whatever her title was. Her function was to go around explaining to black people why Trump is not racist. I mean, that's it. I mean, does that strike you as an effective public strategy or communication strategy of any kind? In another life, in Southern California, after I was done being a reporter, I had a little PR practice, marketing communications practice, online practice. And I kind of really specialized in very difficult cases where big companies were kind of under existential attack. I'm not talking about a legal attack. Most often I was talking about maybe a company that owned a piece of property and wanted to build some houses there, or a home builder that wanted to get some permission to build some houses there. And the Sierra Club types would come out and they would wail and gnash their teeth about why that should not be allowed to happen. And they would go to court, they would drag it on, they would go, they had virtually unlimited access to local media. And the best the developers could do would be just to kind of like follow them around going, oh, no, that's not true. No, that's not true either. That's not true. Until, when people called me, usually they were pretty deep in the weeds and they were going, Colin, we heard you're really good at this. We want you to follow them around and tell them it's not true. No, we're not going to do that. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. Whatever we do, if you guys really want to hear some about like how this actually works in the real world, I'd be happy to tell you at a future podcast. But here's what I used to tell them. I said, listen, just if we do what just get me on board, I'll start doing stuff. And within 3 weeks, instead of us sitting here complaining about them, they are going to be complaining about us. They're going to be complaining about us being on TV. They're going to be complaining about us on talk radio. They're going to be complaining about us getting all this attention all over the damn place, not from the interested parties, but from disinterested third parties. That makes it look a lot more credible. But yet, all the Republicans can do is just follow around these liberals and these black politicians. That's all they can do is go, oh, why are you calling me bad names? Why are you calling me a racist? I mean, the reason they do it is because it works. It's because Republicans and conservatives have been caving on this for as long as anybody can remember. You're a racist. Okay, can I give you more free stuff to show you that I'm not racist? That's the best we can do. That's the best they have done. But let's bring this up to today. Okay, so you're a Democrat, and you know what works. Okay, the racist thing works because the Republicans and conservatives have allowed it to work. But all of a sudden, it seems like your choices are a lot more narrow as to what you can bust the conservatives on. The economy's roaring, people have jobs, all sorts of good stuff's happening around the world. But we still have that one little card that Republicans are just scared to death of, and that's the race card. And that's why it's so effective, because Republicans just won't, and conservatives just won't stand up and call BS on the entire thing. As a result of that, because nobody's standing up, nobody's pushing back, we get all these crazy stories where people just get in front of a TV camera and say stupid things without any fear that somebody's going to come in and contradict them and say, that's kind of stupid, isn't it, what you just said? I mean, why don't we start with this story about 29 people arrested in a fight on Fremont Street after the Martin Luther King parade in Las Vegas.
Take a look at this video of a huge brawl on Fremont Street. This is after the Martin Luther King Day parade wrapped up. Metro officers were there in seconds to start breaking up the madness. 13 Action News reporter Gina Lazara tells us how it started and shows us the chaos before police got it under control.
Witnesses tell me this whole thing started off with kids being kids before it escalated way out of control. People were running in every direction. It was complete chaos on Fremont Street.
Even my employees just came back here, hide. They're afraid of shooting or something.
Liam Liani was working at this cell phone accessory stand when the fight broke out.
I just see a big fight between those kids, and the police officers just jump in.
He whipped out his phone to record the madness, but even he wasn't sure what exactly was going on.
First, you just see people running, so they didn't know what happened. So everybody, oh my God, there's terror attack or something.
As of right now, it appears kids were just being kids before police stepped in to try and stop it. According to witnesses, that made it worse. Liam says it was a full 2 minutes of madness, with officers drawing their weapons and tackling people to the ground.
Police officers don't know who's to blame, so just jump on everybody.
More than 100 people were involved in the brawl. 23 kids and 6 adults were arrested. There were no major injuries. On Fremont Street, Gina Lazara, 13 Action News.
Man, take all of the really ridiculous news stories of the last 5 years, wrap them all up into one, squinch them all down, put them in a 2-minute segment, and that's what we just listened to. Kids being kids? Really? My favorite part of this story is this is just I know it's fun. You know, we say these things here, but so if I say that, we treat the criminals like the victims and the victims like the criminals, people think I'm exaggerating. If I say, listen, the people think that cops responding to a riot causes a riot, people say, well, Colin, I know what you mean. I know you're just dramatizing things to make your point. No, I'm not. I'm not dramatizing. I'm understating it. That's what that newsreader just told us. Oh, it was fine. Those 100 black people that were raging down the street and creating an enormous amount of violence and threat to themselves and to other people on Fremont Experience. I've been there many times. In Las Vegas, they were just fine until the police came along and made it worse. Fighting crime, arresting black criminals causes crime. If you really want to understand that, you have to understand quantum physics, where we're like plucking this string in the timeline today, and somehow it reverberates to 10 minutes ago, 10 years ago, 50 years ago. Yeah, I probably watched too many science fiction movies. Apparently, I'm not the only one. Kids just being kids. I got that story from a couple of our viewers in Vegas. And they said, Colin, that happens every year. Just check it out on YouTube. So just check out Martin Luther. Go to YouTube. Check out Martin Luther King fights, large fights, Las Vegas. Martin Luther King Day, Las Vegas, large fights, something like that. Boom. You're going to get a big one from last year, a couple of more big ones from the years before. These are just the ones that we have on video. So, and in our world, if it's not on video, it doesn't exist. And so these reporters are saying, "Oh, it's just kids being kids." My favorite stories are the ones where reporters are telling us one thing, but the video are telling us in the B-roll, the so-called B-roll. That's the film they play in the background while you're talking. Those are my favorite stories, when the B-roll totally contradicts what the reporter is telling us. Remember, the first time I saw that dramatically was in Milwaukee. I think they have a big party for Juneteenth in Milwaukee. The black thing where they celebrate the end of slavery. And so they have a big rolling parade in Milwaukee every year on that day. And for a couple of years, it was lots and lots of nasty business, lots of fights. I'm trying to think of new ways to describe essentially the same thing. Lots of fights, violence, threats, defiance, attacks on police. They attacked a horse. lots of, this one white couple was walking down towards the parade. Oh, we're going to go see the parade. It's going to be real nice. We get to see the Negroes on parade. Cops are racing by to go to the riot. One of them kindly stopped and said, "Where are you going?" "Oh, we're going to the parade." "Get the hell out of here. There's a riot right in front of you. Turn around and run." So anyway, so flash forward to that evening in Milwaukee News. And by the way, that just kept getting worse and worse and worse. So at some point during, the cops were dispersing the parade, but thousands of black people are walking up the street surrounding a car, and there's a helicopter over top of the parade, the rolling riot. We see all these black people surround these two cars. They're pulling people out of the cars. They're kicking them, beating them. You're seeing this from the helicopter. Seeing them destroy the cars. It's like this is like the highlight of the party. And while they're showing us this video, there's the reporter, the earnest reporter, looking into the camera, describing all the great things that happened on this ridiculously violent day. And he's telling us that just a few people ruined it for the rest of us. In the meantime, we're seeing thousands of people ruining it. Right while he's saying it was a few people. And that's what this story was. This little chickie going, "Oh, they're just kids, being kids." They were running down the street. They're attacking the cops. They're attacking each other. We see the storekeeper going, "Yeah, my employees had to run in here because they were afraid." I've been to Las Vegas many a time. When I lived in Southern California, my fellows and I, we'd hop in a car, put our golf clubs in the back, drive across the desert. It's very pleasant. 4-hour drive from where I lived. Play some golf, go see Cirque du Soleil, or go see a concert, go out to dinner, maybe meet up with some members of the other opposite sex. Yeah, I'm one of those squares who still think there's only two sexes. Don't tell anybody. I don't want to get kicked off my podcast. So anyway, been there many a time. I've been to Las Vegas many a time. Saw lots and lots of crowds. But I've only seen crowds acting up 2 times. I mean, I've been to golf tournaments, concerts. Just the casino itself is a crowded thing. If you go on the weekend, you're walking down the strip, it's crowded. You're walking down at Fremont, what we just saw, it's crowded. But I've only seen Argy Bargy in Las Vegas 2 times. First time was a Mike Tyson fight. I actually went out there to cover it for a magazine, so I got a couple of free tickets. Anyway, so after the fight, this was at the, let me see, I'm pretty sure, was that the MGM Grand? I think it was. Anyway, after the fight, you could tell the casino, there was lots of bad vibrations on that casino floor. Tupac, that was the night Tupac was shot and killed. I think I may have been one of the last white guys to see Tupac. So that night, lots of black mob violence on the casino. They had, I think there were people were overturning the tables and things like that. Bad business. That was one example. The next example was I found myself in Las Vegas during the first and last and only NBA All-Star game. It was just an accident. I was there. I didn't know anything about the NBA All-Star game. My friends and I roll in. Forget what hotel we were staying at, but whatever hotel we were staying at, that's where all the NBA guys were. That's where all these, so you ride down the elevator, you see all these really famous people. It wasn't just the NBA, right? It was all these, retired baseball players or football players and lots of basketball guys running around. Also lots of rap stars, lots of guys in wheelchairs, i.e. guys that were shot for one reason or another. There was a lot of argy-bargy at lots of the casinos. There was a lot of fighting, a lot of people running out on bills, a lot of disagreeable people. It was the fellas doing this. The NBA said, we're not going back to Las Vegas ever. That's it. Yet you go to a PGA golf match. I mean, what's so special about that? Why is there never any violence at that? How come when I went to see Tiger playing at Torrey Pines, or when I went to the British Open over in England, how come there were no metal detectors? How come there were not large groups of people stampeding through the grounds, attacking the players, attacking the fans, attacking the officials? Why is that? Why is this large-scale violence a black thing? I mean, we did the story about the hundreds of motorcyclists rampaging through the streets of Miami. At the end of the story, the reporter tosses in kind of as an afterthought, oh yeah, a lot of these bikes are stolen or unregistered. Other than that, it was fantastic. Near LA. This is like the third time this has happened in the last couple months. Big party bus stops at a 7-Eleven. Bunch of black people go in, loot the place, rob the place, beat up the person in there. Luckily, the cops were kind of close by and they hauled the bus over. Of course, when they hauled the bus over, nobody knew nothing on the bus. It was just a bunch of cops hassling a bunch of black people. I mean, that's the script now. That is the script. Everybody knows the script. I'm not telling you anything new. When you're in a jam, just accuse the closest white person of racism, and that whatever jam you were in it's going to be a lot lighter and easier to bear than it was just a few minutes before. Every cop knows that. Why don't we leave Las Vegas and go down to beautiful Austin, Texas? Now, if you've ever been to Austin, you know that they're very proud of their weirdness. Keep Austin weird. That's what the signs say, right? University of Texas, they're very proud of the fact that they're like a liberal enclave inside this ocean of hillbillies, rednecks, gun lovers, Trump supporters. But now I think Austin has actually outdone itself. Because they got a big problem in Austin. That's what I learned in Austin from Austin Television on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. They don't have enough black people in Austin.
A celebration of the civil rights icon comes as the city faces a struggle with its black population. Yes, the challenge is keeping families from moving and convincing more African Americans that Austin is as welcoming as it says. Chris Davis joins us from UT's campus with that part of this story. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Kylie and Sally. Preparations are already underway, by the way, here at the other end of this courtyard for that march. And what better place for it to start than right here at the MLK statue here on the UT campus. Now, today's march comes just shortly after the U.S. Census Bureau. New numbers released by them show some good news and some bad for Austin's African-American population. Now, the figures from the U.S. Census Bureau's yearly American Community Survey show there are more African Americans living in the city, but they make up a smaller percentage of the total population. Now, according to that survey, about 4,300 more African Americans lived here in 2016 than they did in 2010, but that fell from 8.5% of the total population to 7.6% as more and more people move in. Now, the city's been studying this to come up with solutions for years now, including ways to combat gentrification. But some black leaders say the problem is more fundamental. Lahoma Dade owns the event planning company Events Unleashed and is an ambassador for the Greater Austin Black Chamber of Commerce. She says there's just not an even playing field, and African Americans don't feel as welcome here. Black-owned businesses don't get the same support, she says, and black job seekers and entrepreneurs are overlooked, especially in the tech space.
We can talk as African American community all day about the issues, but the best thing we could do is find a good solution, and that is one, supporting Black businesses, and two, being willing to be an organization that hires people of color, that doesn't just have lip service to check off a box.
And that, she says, can start with city leadership. They're the ones who can lead the way in hiring practices and in teaching cultural competency. We'll send it back to you.
You know, some of these stories, I'm even kind of embarrassed for them that they're on the air. So I know you can't see this. I posted this on my minds.com video channel. So the story opened up with two lovely, very young ladies talking about this enormous problem that Austin had. They got to have more Black people in Austin, and we got to do that. They never said why, or why we have to divide that along, ethnic and racial lines, but that's like a self-evident proposition. Then they throw it out to this other guy who kind of reminded me of Big Boy John from the Self-Deception channel. I'm not saying he's fat. I'm just saying he spends a lot more time in the TV studio than he does in the gym. Spends a lot more time in the restaurant than he does on the Stairmaster. And so this guy, again, a very young guy, probably early 20s, he's sitting there giving us a magical mystery tour of every cultural cliche imaginable. We are going to have to train people in cultural competency. I don't have any idea what that is. I guarantee you, Fat Boy that just told us that doesn't have any idea what it is either. I mean, what does it mean? Tell me what's it mean in practice if you're culturally competent. Does that mean just walking on eggshells around every time you see a Black person? You cannot say they speak nice because that's an insult. You cannot say the opposite, which is, hey, what's up with that Ebonics? That's an insult. You can't say you like their hair. That's an insult. And we did a story the other day out of Harlem where the young lady was the 12th grader. She went to a Black charter school. And she learned her lesson so well. She learned basically how to take offense at everything. She learned the institutional racial hostility that is drilled into them every day. They ought to give that young lady like the valedictorian award, summa cum laude, for learning her lessons. Anyway, so she comes back and so the principal had said, hey, I want you guys to speak standard English. That's going to help you in college. It's going to help you in the job market. She comes back and says, no, if you tell me how to speak, that's an insult. I mean, isn't that the same thing people say if you give somebody a cookbook? That kind of means, what, you don't think I know how to cook? And so you're going to school now is one constant act of, what? You don't think I know mathematics? You don't think I know reading, writing, and arithmetics? You think you got something to teach me? Oh no, I've got something to teach you. That was her attitude. Is that what we're going to import to Austin? Are we going to put up big billboards saying Black people are welcome here? Really, what does it mean? I mean, I'm serious. These three people, if you've never been around a lot of TV people, which I have been, never been in a lot of TV studios, which I have been, if you've never been around a lot of reporters, which I have been, you might think they're a little bit different than what they are. They're always, always, always less than what they seem. So when I see a TV reporter, I don't see this glittering intellectual giant with perfect lighting, perfect hair, perfect clothing, perfectly tied knots, and perfectly pronounced vowels and consonants. I see a guy, well, you know what I see? I see a Radio Shack transmitter, I see a cheap camera, and I see lots and lots of nice, lots of artificial artifacts surrounding him to kind of make us believe he's a lot more credible and knows a lot more than he actually does. What's the old definition of journalism? Journalism is the art of writing or speaking with absolute authority about something you know nothing about. All of a sudden we get this kid from Austin who's going to tell us about cultural competency. Yes, Colin? Colin, let me tell you a little bit about cultural competency. Actually, Colin, you might not know this, but black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism, except for me, all the time, everywhere. That explains everything, especially why there are not enough black people in Austin. You know, it's not like people in Austin have not had experience with the fellas. Just go to YouTube or go to your favorite video channel, which at the current time, mine is minds.com. And I did a story on this. I already had it floating around. Last year at the South by Southwest, last couple years at the South by Southwest Festival, SXSW. It's kind of a thing down there in Austin. Austin likes to call itself the live music capital of the world. Anyway, if you Google that, if you YouTube that, you'll see videos of the fellas creating enormous amounts of violence, mob violence on the streets of Austin during SXSW, South by Southwest. Gunfire, riots. I didn't see that fat boy from the Austin TV down there going, "Oh, excuse me, I'm culturally competent. Perhaps I could intercede on your behalf." You know, kind of like June Cleaver did in that movie Airplane. Excuse me, stewardess, I speak jive. I mean, that's how ridiculous it's getting. But one of the reasons it gets so ridiculous is there's never any pushback. I mean, one of the most regular and nasty bits of racial violence in Texas history, the regular one, I think it was called the Texas Relays, University of Texas Relays. They used to have this big track meet, multi-day. Thousands and thousands of black people would pour into Austin. In their wake, they would leave violence, destruction, mayhem, chaos, bad feelings, unpaid restaurant bills, ruined property. Easy to find. And, white girl bleed a lot, don't make the black kids angry. Easy to find, just look it up. Texas Relays. When I think of Austin, I think of, this is another helicopter story. I think of another helicopter story from Halloween. They had one of those haunted houses in a mall parking lot in Halloween. See the helicopter looking down on a group of 100 to 200 black people rampaging through the haunted house, fighting people in there, running away afterwards, all on video in Austin. Was it cultural? Was it our cultural incompetency that somehow caused that? How do you know if you're culturally competent? Do you get a degree in that from journalism school? Just another example of so much, these kids get on front of a TV camera, they say things, as long as it's about race and as long as it's about how much white people suck and black people are oppressed, you're not going to get any pushback. Nobody's going to stand up and put their finger in your face and say, not in public anyway, they're not going to say, that was the dumbest thing I ever heard. Nobody ever gets fired from a reporter job for being down with the cause. But if you leave the cause even by an inch, and you raise your eyebrow at the wrong time, or drop your smile at the wrong time, or hesitate at the wrong time, your career as a TV news reader is over. And that's just the way, and we've allowed this to happen for all these years. If nobody ever disagreed with you, if nobody ever challenged you in school or at home, think of all the dumb things that you would say. Remember I did a story in Minneapolis a couple years ago. Don't make the black kids angry. There's all these foundations out there that are always giving people, we're going to meet another one in a minute, giving PR people and communications people money to run around and do this and do that. You know, by the way, one of the functions of those foundations, hiring people to do these ridiculous campaigns, it's really just a way to give all the campaign people an income in off election years. It's kind of like the government in absentia. So they took this little traveling road show around the country and they stopped in the editorial offices of the daily newspaper in Minneapolis. And they said, you know, global warming causes crime. What? Yeah, it causes crime. As it gets hotter, you know, people are just going to be more irritated. They're going to commit more crime. The Minneapolis Star-News ran a damn editorial saying global warming causes crime, and that's why we have to stop it right now. And now we flash forward to Martin Luther King Day. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, 2018. We get this commercial. We get this public service announcement from Yale. Somebody throwing a lot of money at Yale to create this, what's it called? Well, we're going to hear what it's called, like the global climate change communications product. Get a load of this.
I'm Dr. Anthony Lazarowitz, and this is Climate Connections. Martin Luther King Jr. envisioned a world where everyone lived in harmony. He and others called it a beloved community.
It is a community where we have racial justice, where we don't have discrimination, and where we're living together as brothers and sisters, sitting at common tables together and enjoying the bounty that this earth has to offer without divisions.
Jacqueline Patterson of the NAACP's Environmental and Climate Justice Program says to achieve King's vision, we must address climate change.
We see climate change as a civil rights issue.
She says minority and low-income populations are disproportionately affected by global warming. For example, it's low-income residents who struggle most with pollution, food insecurity, and the lack of resources to rebuild after a disaster. But she says the vision of a beloved community can give people a goal to work towards. If they imagine the future they want and identify the obstacles, they can then chart a pathway forward.
Then people would be able to really start to think in terms of solutions.
Climate Connections is produced by the Yale Center for Environmental Communication. Learn more at yaleclimateconnections.org.
Oh, man. So if Martin were here, he'd be fighting global warming, climate change. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that climate change. I know everybody knows that climate change is just a plot, another example of white racism. Does that sound stupid on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 to 10, where would you put that? 10 being really stupid. Does it sound 10 to you? Two things to know. One, that comes out of Yale. Just goes to show you how otherwise bright people are capable of some very, very stupid things as well. But two, don't forget, during the last 8 years under the Obama administration, one of the main missions of the Environmental Protection Agency was talking about environmental racism. How white people are always taking their trash and dumping it in black neighborhoods and poisoning people down there for no damn reason whatsoever other than they don't like black people. Want to build a factory to employ some of the fellas? No, can't do that. No. That's environmental racism. Want to add an extra truck to your existing factory? Well, you might not be able to do that either because that's environmental racism. Now we've got Yale University, and we don't hear too much. All we can do is hope. We don't hear too much about how much Trump is pulling this stuff up by the roots. Come to think of it, the EPA, I think he's slashing the EPA workforce by about half. In other words, he's got a lot to go. But now Martin Luther King Jr. would have believed in climate change because this fairy tale of climate change, it's kind of fitting, right? This fairy tale of climate change increases black victimization even more. So now we have a synergy of two fairy tales. One hand we have climate change, the other hand we have the relentless black victimization and white racism. Put them together, it's like peanut butter and chocolate, people. And there's nobody to push back. That's it. Everybody is so damn sure of this global warming thing at Yale. You know, if the science is behind all this global warming, why didn't they give Al Gore an award for science? They gave him the Nobel Peace Prize for alerting the world to the dangers of global warming. They didn't give him the prize for science. They gave him a prize for kind of a communications thing. Now we're going to bring the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. into this? Where are the conservatives and where are the Republicans? They're just standing on the sidelines, cowering. And so it just expands. It expands to fill the vacuum. And as it expands, it gets crazier and crazier and more ridiculous, more defiant, more transparently stupid. And the more stupider it gets, the less people are willing to challenge it. But let's look at this story out of Jacksonville, Florida. I didn't follow this that carefully until this morning. I kind of just followed it in the headlines. There was a congresswoman down there, a black congresswoman, member of the Black Caucus. Her name was Corinne Brown. She was diverting all sorts of money into her personal accounts. Let's just say it was very flagrant. I think she got sentenced to 5 to 7 years in prison. And she was found guilty. So she shows up at this MLK Day event after she's been convicted, after she's been disgraced, after she shamed all the people who backed her. And so now the people who backed her only have one or two choices. One, they have to say, oh, you know what? We're not really down with you anymore because you let us down. We were counting on you to be a good person, an example. But you didn't. You turned out to be just another hustler. That's one choice. The other choice is criminality is the new black entitlement. And whatever you did, it doesn't really matter because you're not responsible for your own behavior. And we're going to be behind you 100%. So let's get our Free Corinne Brown movement together right now. They chose door number 2. Check this out.
With just 2 weeks left before former Congresswoman Corinne Brown is scheduled to report to prison, she made a public appearance today at a Martin Luther King Day event in Clay County. It was at Shiloh Church in Orange Park. These are photos of her at this morning's event. News 4 Jax reporter Jim Pickett was the only local TV reporter there, and he reached out to Brown as she was leaving.
It could be one of her last appearances in public office. Corinne Brown speaking here during the Martin Luther King breakfast in Clay County. And her appearance had some glad and some very upset.
When it came to answering questions from us, Corinne Brown once again ignored the cameras. We went to the breakfast after receiving a tip that she might attend, but after 2 hours, she didn't show. As soon as we left, we're told she arrived, so we went back. Organizers say it was important for her to be there on Martin Luther King Day.
What has happened to her kind of echoes MLK Day and what it's about. As pastors and as ministers, we know that there was an injustice.
But not everyone agrees. At the head table sat political leaders from Clay County, and many didn't know Brown was invited to attend. Sheriff Darrell Daniels says when she walked in at the end of the breakfast, it took him by surprise.
I'm thinking it may not have been the most appropriate setting to bring someone who has some cloudiness associated with her name at this point into that setting in front of those people. Now, it was socially awkward, to say the least.
Again, Brown wouldn't say anything to us, but during the breakfast, we're told she said she was innocent.
We sat and had prayer with her. As I said, she's finishing up a career. Her life is practically about over for 70 years, and she's done a lot of good things. So we wanted to have prayer with her. We're pastors. We're not political people.
I asked Reverend Randall about the feelings of the sheriff and others. He said he didn't want to make this a political issue and wouldn't comment on that. Jim Piggott, Channel 4, the local station.
Brown is under orders to report to prison by noon, January 29th.
So all the ministers are getting up there going, well, we're past this. We don't judge people. Did you judge the person who shot Trayvon Martin in self-defense? Do pastors all over the country, did they judge Donald Trump? MLK Day? Oh yes, LA Times had a huge story about that. Black pastors all over the country, black churches all over the country. MLK, the Sunday before Martin Luther King Jr. Day, his birthday. That's the second biggest holiday of the year, religious holiday of the year, besides Christmas. That comes from the Los Angeles Times, and they wouldn't lie, would they? And so now all the pastors are going, oh no, well we can't condemn her. She's a child of God. She needs our mercy. Again, just another example of this ridiculous, the stupidity, this dumbfounding level of ignorance filling a vacuum because there's no pushback. We get the sheriff down there. The sheriff was a black guy. Kind of said the right things, but in a very, very, very weak way. I mean, a black person can't even stand up and say, hey, you did wrong. You got convicted of a jury of doing some really nasty business. You didn't get railroaded like the other people at the speaker thing said. You got convicted by a jury of your peers. Truth be told, probably a jury of your betters. And now you're bringing that weak story in here that you were framed, you were railroaded. White people do it too. You never did it, but if you did, white people do it too, so why are we picking on you? And so if Republicans and conservatives are so hesitant to push back on these ridiculous stories that we see every day, and Martin Luther King Day was just kind of a good example of some of these crazy stories out there. I mean, how are they going to push back on these stories in a way? They're kind of, by themselves, they're kind of trivial, but put them together and it's like, oh yeah, there's a pattern there. If conservatives and Republicans won't push back on that, how are we going to get them to push back on affirmative action, where black people get 250 points added to their SAT? Where we have to pretend that black high schools are the equal to other high schools, where Asian kids go, where Asian kids are, taking advanced placement, getting these incredible grades, working incredibly hard. Then when it comes time to get into college, we have to ignore all the time everybody put in to learn the piano, to do community service, to get the grades, to be a leader. And we just have to turn around and say, that doesn't have any meaning because we have to give lots of points to this black person over here because you've had an unfair advantage. And conservatives and Republicans, with some notable exceptions, just sit there and shrug our shoulders and go, yeah, well, what are you going to do? I mean, is that how far down the road of racial insanity we are in this country now? We can't push back even a little bit on little common sense things. I'm probably making this easier than I really think it is. But when you think about how for the last 8 years under Obama, the federal government looked at everything through the lens of race, they baked that into lots and lots of federal programs, lots and lots of people who work for the federal government in civil service positions. That's the drill, right? When you're in the waning years of a presidency, you try to convert as many political appointees to civil service people as you can. So when you leave, your people are behind you, staying behind you. And there's no doubt in my mind, with all these racial preferences, all this racial insanity kind of baked into so many levels of the federal government, once Trump goes in there and starts pulling things out by the weeds, I mean, we're going to see a level of pushback we have not seen for a long time in this country. Whether that means affirmative action, whether that means welfare, whether that means preferential treatment in colleges, whether that means going to the front of the line for grants and federal job opportunities, federal contracts. Everybody already knows the drill. That if you push on that a little bit, you're going to get the tsunami of people on CNN, MSNBC, and lots of other places that are just going to start calling you a really, really bad person. That's the only thing they have left. At some point, Republicans and conservatives are going to have to realize how ridiculous this is and how weak it is and how weak they are for letting it go on as long as they have. If this stuff continues to grow under Trump's watch, under lots of other people's watch, there's a tear in the social fabric that I don't think can be mended if it keeps ripping. Black people just are not that into us. They're telling us that all the time. Are we listening? Hillary said we don't listen to black people. She was right. We're not listening to them. We're not listening to the MLK Day speeches where the ministers get up and say, oh, yeah, we got a lot of racism to overcome. Translation: I don't really like white people, so I'm just going to start blaming them for everything. Guarantee, if you do that, you're not going to make even one black kid angry.